A virgin maid fulfills the last wish of a prince who only has 6 months to live. Before we begin this beautiful period romance story, tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I love knowing where you're joining me from. The day the physicians spoke, the castle forgot how to breathe. Word ran along the stone corridors, not in shouts, but in half-formed whispers. A footman slipped through the servants' hall, eyes wide, mouth tight. A kitchen maid came in from the yard with a basket of carrots and left it on the floor without noticing. Even the scullery boys, always noisy, moved more softly, as if sound itself had become disrespectful. Amelia was on her knees in the far corner of the great linen room, folding sheets into neat, careful squares. Her hands were quick, her shoulders a little hunched, the way of someone used to taking up as little space as possible. She had been counting under her breath. 24, 25. The door opened sharply. "Amelia," Mrs. Fairchild's voice cut through the room with its usual crispness. "Stop that and come at once." Amelia rose so quickly she nearly upset the stack beside her. "Yes, Mrs. Fairchild." The head housekeeper stood in the doorway, keys at her belt, forehead lined deeper than usual. Behind her, 2 maids whispered into each other's sleeves. "What has happened?" one of them breathed when Mrs. Fairchild turned away. "Hush," the other said. "They say the prince—" Mrs. Fairchild snapped her fingers. "You may gossip on your own time. Move. The household will not run itself because the kingdom has lost its head." Amelia's heart gave a jump, lost its head. She did not understand what that meant, not fully, only that every face she passed on the way down the corridor was pale. She fell into step beside Mrs. Fairchild. "Ma'am," Amelia ventured softly, "is it true something has occurred?" Mrs. Fairchild did not slow. "Something has been confirmed. That is all you need to know." They passed a pair of lords moving in the opposite direction, deep in conversation. 6 months, they say. 6, one murmured. "If that," said the other, shaking his head. "The physicians have tried every remedy." Amelia's breath caught, but she kept her eyes on the flagstones. She did not dare ask who they meant. Everyone knew. Everyone had always spoken of him, even when she first came to the castle. The prince, Edward, the young man who ought to have had decades ahead of him. "The linens will manage a day without you," Mrs. Fairchild said. "You have been reassigned." Amelia blinked. "Reassigned, ma'am?" Mrs. Fairchild turned into a narrower passage, the one that led toward the grander parts of the castle. "We require a steady hand in His Highness's private apartments, someone quiet, someone who does not chatter or drop things. I have chosen you." Amelia's feet stumbled, though the stones were even. "Me? But I am only—" "You are exactly what is needed. You will prepare his tea, see to the tidying of his chamber, bring him his medicine when the physicians instruct. You will speak only when addressed. You will not repeat anything you hear. And you will remember you are in the presence of the heir to the throne." Amelia swallowed. Her mouth felt dry. "Yes, ma'am." Mrs. Fairchild gave her a quick, measuring glance. "You have served here 3 years without causing trouble. Do not begin now. The prince has enough burdens." They turned again, and the air changed. The stones were polished here, the tapestries thicker. Amelia always moved quickly through these passages when sent on errands, never lingering. Today she could not shake the feeling that she had stepped onto a path she could not leave. At the door of the service pantry near the prince's apartments, Mrs. Fairchild stopped. "You will take in a tray now," she said. "Tea and the draught prescribed by the physicians. His Highness is to take it at once. The footman will announce you. You will not stare. You will not faint. You will curtsy, and do as you are told." Amelia's hands twisted in her apron. "Yes, ma'am." Mrs. Fairchild's expression softened just a fraction. "It is an honor, Amelia. Remember that." Inside the pantry, a small tray had been prepared with a teapot, a single cup, and a glass of something pale and bitter-smelling. A folded cloth lay beside the cup. The footman on duty, Thomas, lifted the tray and set it into Amelia's hands with unusual care. "Mind yourself," he murmured. "He is not as they say." "As who says?" she whispered. Thomas only shook his head and opened the narrow service door that led into the prince's antechamber. A higher-ranking footman in livery with brighter braid stood ready near the inner door. He looked Amelia over as if he suspected she might break under the weight of the tray. "This way," he said in a low tone, then pushed open the door with a practiced hand. "Your Highness, the maid with your tea." Amelia caught a glimpse of a high ceiling, tall windows, the gleam of a polished table. The tray wobbled a little in her hands, and she tightened her grip. She stepped inside. The world narrowed. She had heard so many tales. That he was proud, that he was distant, that his temper was sharp as a blade. She had pictured someone surrounded by glittering objects, wrapped in silk, looking down his nose at the world. Instead, she saw a young man seated in a plain upholstered chair near the window, a blanket over his knees. The light from outside fell across his face, showing a pallor beneath his skin, but his eyes were clear. A book lay closed on the small table beside him. He turned his head when she entered. There was no flurry of attendants, no trumpets, only a quiet room, a prince in a chair, and a maid with shaking hands. "Set it there, if you please," he said, his voice low, not unkind, indicating the table at his elbow. The footman withdrew silently, leaving Amelia alone with him. She moved forward on unsteady feet, every step measured. The tray seemed to grow heavier with each second. She lowered it onto the table with care, relieved when the porcelain did not chatter against the wood. "Thank you," he said. Amelia, startled by being addressed directly, dropped into a curtsy. "Your Highness?" His gaze lingered on her for a moment, curious rather than cold. "You are new." "No, Your Highness," she said quickly, then flushed. "That is, I have been in service here for some time. Only not in your rooms." "Ah," a shadow of amusement touched his eyes. "Then, new to me. What is your name?" "Amelia, Your Highness." "Amelia." He repeated it as if trying the sound. "Mrs. Fairchild sent you?" "Yes, Your Highness." He looked at the tray. "Is that the physician's draught?" "Yes." "And is it as unpleasant as it smells?" he asked mildly. The question was so unexpected that Amelia almost smiled. I could not say, Your Highness. I have not been asked to taste it." "A pity," he said, and lifted the glass. "Then we must put our faith in science." He drank it in one swallow, his jaw tightening for a moment. He set the glass down and took a breath, closing his eyes briefly. When he opened them, he found Amelia still standing where she had placed the tray, uncertain whether she should retreat or wait. "Did Mrs. Fairchild instruct you to fly from the room the moment your task was complete?" he asked. No, Your Highness." "Then you may breathe." "I do not bite." She let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. "Yes, Your Highness." He studied her, not in the way Lady Charlotte did when selecting fabrics or choosing who to favor with a nod, but as if trying to see something beneath the surface. "How long have you been in Wessex Castle, Amelia?" he asked. 3 years, Your Highness, since I was 16. "And before that?" "A village to the north, Your Highness." She hesitated. "It is small. I do not think anyone here would know it." "I know less than you might imagine," he said lightly. "The world beyond these walls grows vague when one spends too much time inside them." He looked toward the window then, the line of his mouth tightening for a brief moment, as if remembering something. Amelia twisted her fingers together. "Your tea will grow cold, Your Highness." Ah, tragedy upon tragedy. There was a gentleness in the way he spoke the jest, as if he were trying to ease her nerves. Very well. She poured the tea for him, hand steadier now, filling the cup just to the brim he preferred, though she had not known that a moment ago. He watched the movement of her hands. "You have a careful touch," he remarked. "Important in a house like this." "Yes, Your Highness," she said softly. "One does not wish to break what does not belong to one." "Nothing here belongs to any of us," he said. "It all belongs to the crown. Even I, they say, belong to it." He said it lightly, almost with a smile, but there was something in his eyes that made Amelia's heart pinch. A sound came from the inner door. A soft knock. Amelia stepped back at once. "Come," the prince called. The royal physician entered, bowed, and gave Amelia a brief nod of acknowledgement. "Your Highness, I came to ensure the draught was taken." "It was," Edward said. "Our new Amelia administered it with great seriousness." The physician glanced at the empty glass. "Very good, Your Highness. We shall continue twice daily." Amelia understood this as her cue to withdraw. She curtsied again. "If it please Your Highness, I will attend to the linens in the adjoining room." "Go then," he said, "but do not vanish entirely. Mrs. Fairchild will be cross if she must find a replacement already." Amelia turned away, feeling the faintest warmth steal into her cheeks at the way he said it. She moved into the inner chamber, where the bed stood, and busied herself with straightening the coverlet, smoothing pillows, and setting things in order. Through the open door, she could hear fragments of the conversation between prince and physician. Fatigue is to be expected. Must conserve strength. 6 months, you said. Cannot be exact, Your Highness. Only that the lungs... Amelia focused on her work. It was not her place to listen, she reminded herself. Yet the words lodged in her mind anyway. 6 months. When the physician left, the room grew quiet again. Amelia finished her tasks and presented herself once more. Is there anything further, Your Highness? She asked. Not at present, he said. Thank you, Amelia. She stepped back, curtsied, and left the chamber, her heart beating hard for reasons she could not fully name. The next days fell into a pattern. She rose early, helped in the general work of the servants' wing, then was sent up to the prince's apartments at the same hour each morning. She brought tea and the draught. She adjusted the curtains. She kept the fire steady. She moved softly, like a small, quiet current in the corner of his life. He spoke to her more each day. Did you sleep well, Amelia? Yes, Your Highness. And you? Well enough to vex the physicians. Or, what is the weather today? Ah, you smile. Why? Because, Your Highness, I do not think the weather would dare be anything but fine when you ask about it. That is generous of you. I have found that the weather has little respect for princes. Sometimes he said very little, only nodded or closed his eyes. On those mornings, Amelia went about her duties in silence, aware of his breathing, the occasional cough, the slight slump of his shoulders when he thought no one was watching. Rumors swirled among the servants. They spoke of the prince in low voices, always with a sideways glance, afraid the walls themselves might carry tales upstairs. 6 months, the kitchen boy whispered one evening. I heard Mr. Kettle saying it over the soup. Hush, Mrs. Linden, the older maid, warned. You will bring bad luck on your own head with such talk. Amelia listened, her hands busy with peeling potatoes. She said nothing, but her chest felt tight. 6 months sounded like a number on a page, not a measure of a man's life. On the 6th morning of her service in his chambers, she carried in his tray to find him standing instead of seated, a hand on the back of the chair for support. The sight startled her more than if he had been surrounded by courtiers. Your Highness, she began, should you be... Standing? He finished. So my jailers tell me. He took a few slow steps toward the window, the blanket absent now. His figure thinner than she might have expected, but still upright, still dignified. He reached the window and looked out over the grounds. The physicians say I must exercise the lungs, he said, as though they were a pair of boots that have grown too stiff. Amelia set the tray down. The air is clear today, Your Highness. It may do you good. He glanced back at her. You sound like one of them. I beg your pardon, she said, mortified. Do not beg it, he said. They tell me so many things. It is pleasant to hear it from someone who does not look like she is measuring my pulse with her eyes. He turned back to the window. Tell me, Amelia, does the village you come from have a view such as this? No, Your Highness, she said. We had fields and a small stream, and a hill, but nothing so grand. And are fields and hills less dear for being less grand? She thought of the patch of wildflowers near her parents' cottage. No, Your Highness. He smiled slightly. I thought not. There was a knock at the outer door then, and the footman ushered in 2 men in dark, well-cut coats, advisers by their bearing. Amelia stepped back at once. Your Highness, the elder of the men said, bowing. We hoped for a moment. Lady Charlotte is not with you, Edward asked, a hint of dryness in his tone. No, Your Highness, this is a matter for the council. Very well, Amelia, you may see to the bedchamber. She retreated, closing the door partway behind her. The thin gap allowed sound to pass. She did not intend to listen, yet the voices reached her all the same. Your Highness, there are matters that cannot be delayed. The physicians have spoken, Edward said. Yes, Your Highness, and the realm must prepare. Prepare, Edward repeated. For what? My funeral. A pause. For the question of succession, Your Highness. The words seemed to thud against the walls. As long as I breathe, I am the succession, Edward said quietly. Of course, Your Highness, the adviser said in a hasty tone. But if the worst should occur and there is no heir of your body, then my cousin Henry will be waiting, Edward said. You may speak plain. We are not children to dance around facts. Amelia's hands froze on the pillow she was smoothing. Henry. Lord Henry. She had seen him once at a distance in the great hall, tall, fair, smiling too broadly. The nobles already look to him, the younger adviser said. He is willing, but some feel there should be a clearer line. A child, Your Highness. If there were a child... Edward's silence was long enough that Amelia could hear the faint ticking of the clock on the mantel. And which noble house, he asked at last, is eager to give their daughter in marriage to a man with 6 months to live? No one answered. We have made inquiries, the elder ventured. There is hesitation. Families fear for their daughters' futures. I do not blame them, Edward said softly. Your Highness, the younger pressed, there may be other ways. A lady of good birth, perhaps not a formal marriage, but... And you advise I leave a tangle of claims behind me? Edward's voice was gentle, but there was steel beneath. Do you wish for factions and quarrels the moment I am in my grave? No, Your Highness, both men said together. Amelia forced herself to move, to tuck in sheets, to smooth the coverlet. Her mind raced ahead of her. A child, an heir. In the other room, the conversation went on, lower now, the words harder to distinguish. Only fragments reached her. Your Highness's own wishes, the stability of Wessex, someone discreet, loyal, easily provided for. Her pulse thudded in her ears. She stepped quietly to the doorway, meaning to close it more firmly, to shut out what she had no right to hear. Just as her hand reached for the edge of the door, her name floated clearly into the air. The maid, Amelia. She froze. There was a short, tense silence in the other room. She is young, came the younger adviser's hesitant voice. Humble, no family of influence. She has been in service here quietly. The staff speak well of her, and His Highness already... That is enough, Edward said sharply. Amelia's fingers dug into the wood of the door. After a moment his tone softened. She is in my service because she is quiet and kind. Do not drag her into your schemes as though she were a pawn on a board. But, Your Highness, the elder said, if there were to be any thought of an heir, one would need someone trustworthy, someone who would not use the child for her own ambition. And you assume a maid is incapable of ambition? Edward asked, a tired irony in his voice. No, Your Highness. Only that her life might be easier to guard, and her loyalty easier to secure. There was a pause that felt like the world holding its breath. We only mean, the younger continued, that if Your Highness were ever to consider such a path, someone like her would be suitable. Amelia's heart pounded so hard, she thought they must hear it. Enough, Edward said again, more quietly. Leave Miss Amelia out of this conversation. Footsteps moved, chairs scraped. The talk shifted to other matters, the tones becoming more formal. Amelia stepped back from the door, her hands cold. She finished making the bed with automatic movements, her mind tumbling. When the advisers had gone and the footman had closed the door behind them, she carried in a folded blanket to place over the arm of the prince's chair. He looked weary, his shoulders slightly slumped. Is there anything else, Your Highness? She asked, keeping her voice steady. He looked at her, a long, searching look, as if wanting to see whether she had heard. Whatever he saw, he kept to himself. No, he said at last. Thank you, Amelia, that will be all. She curtsied and left, her steps careful. Outside, the corridor felt too bright. 2 senior advisers, different from the ones who had just visited, stood in the shadow of a pillar, their heads close together. If there is no heir, Henry will be next, one murmured. He is not unfit, but the people love Edward. The people will follow the crown, the other replied, with or without their love. And if there were to be an heir, well then all our questions would be answered, would they not? They moved off down the corridor, their cloaks sweeping behind them. Amelia pressed herself against the wall to let them pass. Her hands were trembling. She could still hear another echo from earlier in the morning. The maid, Amelia, someone like her, would be suitable. As she walked away, their words tangled with the last she had heard, forming a single impossible thought. They had spoken her name in the same breath as the word heir. Amelia told herself all that day that she must have misheard. There were many Amelias in the world, many words that sounded like heir. The walls played tricks. So did fear. Still, her hands shook when she folded napkins in the servants' hall that evening. Mrs. Linden noticed. You are pale, child, the older maid said. Have you eaten? Yes, Amelia said. I am fine. You are never fine when you say it like that, Mrs. Linden replied. Keep your thoughts on your work. That is what keeps us all from going mad in a house this size. Amelia tried. She swept. She carried buckets. She polished a silver tray until she could see her own anxious eyes reflected back. Every time someone spoke her name, she flinched. Amelia, the laundry. Amelia, where did you put the starch? Amelia, mind that bucket, girl. By night, exhaustion pulled at her limbs. Still, when she lay down in the narrow bed in the maid's dormitory, sleep did not come at once. She stared at the dark rafters and saw the prince's face instead, the way he had looked at her after the advisers left his chamber. He had known. He had known they had spoken of her, but he had sent her away. He had not said a word. Perhaps that was mercy. Morning brought no answers, only work. The prince's routine continued. Tea, draught, quiet conversation. He did not mention the meeting again. Neither did she. On the third day after, as she set a book back on his table, he said suddenly, Amelia, do the rumors trouble you? Her hand stopped. Rumors, Your Highness? There are always rumors, he said. My health, the council, the weather, the cook's temper. I do not listen, Your Highness, she said. It was almost true. Good, he said. Then we are alike. I find that giving my attention to what is in front of me is quite enough. She felt his gaze on her, but she kept her eyes on the book's spine. Will you be required this afternoon? He asked after a moment. I will go where I am sent, Your Highness. Of course you will, he said with a faint smile. It seems you are to be sent here again. There is to be a small gathering in my sitting room. Tea, a few guests, nothing grand. Mrs. Fairchild will have told you by now. Amelia had heard nothing. Her heart jumped. No, Your Highness, she has not. She will, he said. Do not worry, it is not a trial. Only people with too much silk talking about nothing at all. He said it lightly, but she saw the strain in the set of his shoulders. Downstairs, scarcely an hour later, Mrs. Fairchild confirmed it. Amelia, your duties this afternoon will be in His Highness's sitting room, the housekeeper said. You will serve tea to the prince and his guests. There will be no clumsiness, no idle chatter, and no staring. The company will include Lady Charlotte. You will remember your place. Yes, ma'am, Amelia said. Mrs. Fairchild's eyes narrowed. You have done well so far. Do not give anyone cause to say I misjudged you. Yes, ma'am. By mid-afternoon, the sitting room buzzed with a controlled sort of energy. Amelia carried in the first tray, listening to the murmur of voices. Count is dreadful, of course, but he bears it so bravely. One must think of the future of Wessex. Lady Charlotte has been so constant. The sitting room itself was bright, lined with books and a few paintings. Amelia did not look at them. Her attention stayed on the teapot, the cups, the small cakes arranged in neat circles, as if that order might reach the people who ate them. Prince Edward sat in his usual chair near the window, dressed more formally than he had been in recent days. His cravat was knotted precisely, his coat brushed to a soft sheen. There was colour in his cheeks that might have been a touch of effort. He rose when Lady Charlotte entered, taking her hand briefly. Lady Charlotte, he said, you honour the house. She curtsied, eyes bright. Your Highness, it is good to see you out of your bedchamber. Doctor's orders, he said. They will not allow me to sink into idleness. They say I must be seen. Then I join them in their wisdom, she replied, smiling. She was as lovely as the servants said. Fair hair pinned neatly, gown of pale blue that flowed when she moved, voice smooth as cream. Amelia watched her from the edge of the room as she poured tea, observing the way Lady Charlotte settled herself on the settee nearest the prince, with the ease of someone who considered it almost hers. Other guests stood or sat nearby, a pair of older ladies, an uncle of some sort, a young gentleman with careful hair. They spoke of London, of the railway, of a concert. No one spoke of lungs, physicians, or 6 months. Do you still play the piano, Your Highness? Lady Charlotte asked. When the instrument cooperates, Edward said. I remember a piece you played at my parents' house, she said. You were, how old were we? 17? 17, he said. I recall I played it badly. You were splendid, she insisted. I was terribly impressed. Then I achieved my aim, he said lightly. They smiled at each other. Amelia's chest tightened unexpectedly. She had never seen him like this, engaged in the easy dance of society. A guest's empty cup drew her back to work. She moved from guest to guest, refilling, careful not to drip or bump anyone. The scent of tea and sugar and perfume blended in the air. When she reached the prince, his hand rested on the arm of his chair, fingers loose. "More tea, Your Highness?" she asked softly. "Thank you," he said, and held his cup steady as she poured. Lady Charlotte watched, her eyes sliding over Amelia with a quick assessment. "And who is this?" Lady Charlotte asked with a light laugh. "A new addition to the household?" Amelia's spine straightened. She did not answer. It was not her place. "This is Amelia," the prince said. "She has been serving in the castle for some time and has lately been assigned to my chambers." "How fortunate for you," Lady Charlotte said, her tone pleasant. "I suppose you know his every preference by now." Amelia flushed. "I only do as I am told, my lady." Lady Charlotte's gaze lingered a moment longer, then moved on. "It is a comfort to see you well attended, Your Highness." "Mrs. Fairchild is very thorough," Edward said. Conversation resumed. Amelia stepped back, letting her hands fall to her sides. She tried to become invisible again. It had always served her well. People forgot you were there if you were quiet enough. They said things or they did not. Either way you were spared, but in a small room, invisibility is harder. "Amelia," Mrs. Fairchild hissed from the doorway later, "take in another plate of cakes. Lady Charlotte has a sweet tooth." "Yes, ma'am." Amelia carried in the plate, holding it securely. She moved toward the low table near the Prince and Lady Charlotte, careful of the carpet. "I must say," Lady Charlotte was saying, "you have caused quite a stir, Your Highness." "I have scarcely moved from these rooms," Edward replied. "That is precisely why," she said. "When a prince retreats from society, society feels his absence. When he appears again, we all flock. Nature abhors a vacuum, and so does a drawing room." He smiled faintly. "You have always had a talent for expression, Lady Charlotte." "I am told I have a talent for many things," she said, glancing down at her gloved hands in mock modesty. Amelia reached the table and lowered the plate. As she did, one of the small cakes shifted. She adjusted the plate to catch it. The movement was slight. The cake stayed in place, no harm done. But in adjusting, her elbow brushed the handle of a cup that had been placed near the edge of the table. Time slowed. The cup tipped. Tea slipped over the rim in a smooth arc and landed in a small splash on the edge of Lady Charlotte's gown. Not much. A shallow stain, more alarming to the eye than damaging to the fabric. But enough. A hush fell, small but sharp. "Oh," Amelia gasped. "My lady, I'm so sorry." She reached for the folded cloth she had brought on the tray, ready to blot the spill. Lady Charlotte drew back her hand as if Amelia's clumsy fingers were more dangerous than the tea. "Do not touch," Lady Charlotte said, her voice still smooth but carrying an edge now. "You have done quite enough." Amelia's hand froze. "My lady," she whispered, "if I may just—" "You may be more careful," Lady Charlotte said. "Look at this. This gown is new." "It can be cleaned," one of the older ladies said gently. "It is not the gown," Lady Charlotte replied, still looking at Amelia. "It is the presumption of some servants, thinking they can hover over their betters as if we were kitchen tables." Heat flooded Amelia's face. "I did not mean—" "Of course you did not mean," Lady Charlotte said. "One never means to be awkward or careless or out of place. And yet here we are." "Lady Charlotte," Edward said quietly, "it was an accident." "Of course, Your Highness," she said, smiling at him. "I do not blame you. I know you value loyalty. It is only that she seems over-eager." Amelia's heart pounded. Words tangled in her throat. Over-eager, as if she had thrust herself into the room. "I beg your pardon, my lady," Amelia said. "I will be more careful." "I should hope so," Lady Charlotte murmured. There was a thin, brittle quiet around them. The young gentleman coughed into his hand. One of the older ladies looked away, suddenly fascinated by a painting. Edward's gaze moved from Lady Charlotte to Amelia. "Amelia has served me with great care," he said. "The fault, if it can be called that, is mine for requiring more of her than a linen closet demands. She has had little practice among such grand company." The words were kind, but they underlined the divide. Amelia felt it keenly. Lady Charlotte lifted her chin. "You are gracious, Your Highness. I am sure she is perfectly suited to linens." Mrs. Fairchild, hovering near the doorway, stepped forward. "Come, Amelia," she said sharply. "Return to the kitchen. I will send another in your place." Amelia almost protested. Being removed from the room felt like admitting she had done something worse than spill a little tea, but the weight of Lady Charlotte's gaze held her tongue. "Yes, ma'am," she said. She curtsied to the prince, eyes lowered, and turned away. As she reached the door, she heard Edward's voice, low but firm. "Lady Charlotte," he said, "you have always prided yourself on kindness." She paused, back still turned. "And I still do," Lady Charlotte replied. "Then allow me to remind you," Edward said, "that kindness is tested not in how we treat those above us or beside us, but those below. Amelia has done nothing to deserve harshness." There was a pause. "Of course, Your Highness," Lady Charlotte said after a moment. "If I spoke too sharply, it was from surprise. I am fond of this gown." "You may send the bill to the Crown," Edward said lightly. "I am told we pay for worse things than a stained hem." Soft laughter rippled through the room, easing the tension. Amelia did not know whether to be grateful or embarrassed. She slipped out and let the door close gently behind her. In the corridor, Mrs. Fairchild's hand caught her elbow and steered her away. "What were you thinking?" Mrs. Fairchild hissed in a low voice. "Under Lady Charlotte's nose, no less." "It was only a little tea," Amelia said. "I can clean it myself. I did not mean—" "Of course you did not mean," Mrs. Fairchild snapped. "Intention does not change the view of the person offended. You must be twice as careful as anyone else. For some, a small mistake is forgivable. For you, it is a mark they will remember." Amelia's throat tightened. "I am sorry, ma'am." Mrs. Fairchild sighed, some of the anger draining away. "I chose you for your quietness, not your clumsiness. Do not prove me wrong. Now back to the kitchen. You are needed there." The afternoon passed in a blur of washing cups, carrying dishes, mopping a floor that did not really need it. Every time someone laughed nearby, Amelia felt as though they were laughing at the picture of her standing in that elegant room, cloth in hand, face red. In the evening, as the servants ate their simple supper, the story had already spread. "I heard Lady Charlotte was soaked to the skin," one girl said. "It was a drop on the skirt," Amelia murmured. "Did she shriek?" a scullery boy asked, eyes bright. "No," another servant said. "She used her voice, that is far worse." Mrs. Linden shooed them all away. "Enough. You have work to do and tongues that wag too freely. Leave the girl be." Later, when the others had gone, Mrs. Linden sat beside Amelia at the long table. "She will forget," the older maid said. "Ladies like her, they have many gowns. This one will not matter in the end." "She will not forget," Amelia said. She looked at me as if I had broken her grandmother's china. "People look," Mrs. Linden said. "Let them. It is not looking that harms you. It is what you do with the way they see you." Amelia frowned. "I do not understand." "You will," Mrs. Linden said. "You are in the prince's chambers now. People will say you are too close. Others will say you are not fit to be there. You cannot control them, only yourself." Amelia toyed with the edge of her apron. "He defended me." Mrs. Linden's eyebrows rose. "His Highness, he said I had done nothing to deserve harshness," Amelia said, her voice low. "In front of them all. Then he saw what was true," Mrs. Linden said. "Take comfort in that, and forget the rest. Forget." As if it were that simple. That night, when the castle grew quiet and the wind pressed softly against the window panes, Amelia sat near the kitchen hearth, washing the last of the cups in warm, soapy water. The room was empty except for the faint crackle of the fire. Her hands moved in a rhythm learned long ago. Dip, wipe, rinse, stack. Her mind wandered back to the prince's face, the way he had looked at her when he spoke to Lady Charlotte. Not pity, something steadier. She had no name for it. A shadow moved in the doorway. She looked up quickly. A young man in royal livery stood there, a messenger's sash across his chest. His boots were still dusted with the corridor's pale powder, as if he had come in a hurry. "Amelia?" he asked. She set the cup down. "Yes." He gave a short bow, more respectful than most offered to maids. "His Highness, Prince Edward, requests that you attend him in his chambers at once, alone." For a moment, Amelia thought she had misheard. "His Highness requests—" "Me?" she asked. The messenger nodded. "By name. You are to come at once." Her hands were still wet from the washing. She wiped them quickly on her apron. "Do I need to bring anything?" she asked. No, he said. Only yourself, Mrs. Fairchild, has been informed. That, more than anything, made it real. Mrs. Fairchild would not allow a maid to vanish upstairs without a summons. Amelia untied her apron, set it on the back of a chair, and smoothed her plain dress with damp palms. Her heart beat so loud, she thought the messenger must hear it. Very well, she said softly. I will go. The corridors felt longer at night. Lamps burned at intervals, casting soft circles of light on stone. Between them, the shadows were thick and uncertain. Amelia walked close to the wall, as if it might steady her. She wondered if she had done something wrong. Had Lady Charlotte complained more bitterly after all? Had she offended someone with her clumsy presence, or was the prince unwell? The thought quickened her steps. At the foot of the staircase leading to the prince's apartments, she met Mrs. Fairchild, standing with arms folded. You are late, the housekeeper said. I came as soon as I was called, ma'am, Amelia replied. Mrs. Fairchild looked her over. Remember where you are going. You will knock. You will not speak unless spoken to. You will not let your imagination wander beyond the duties of a maid. Yes, ma'am, Amelia said. Mrs. Fairchild's gaze softened a little. Do not fret yourself. His Highness is not a monster, only a man who carries too much on his shoulders. Amelia nodded and climbed the remaining steps. The outer footman opened the door without ceremony this time. Go in, he said quietly. He is alone. She stepped into the antechamber. The inner door stood slightly ajar. A line of lamplight lay on the floor. She knocked softly on the wood. Come, the prince's voice called from within. She pushed the door open and entered. The room was quieter than she had ever seen it. No physician, no advisor, no attendant. Only the prince seated near the fire, his chair drawn slightly closer to the warmth. A single lamp burned on the side table, giving the room a gentler light than the usual bright daylight. He looked up when she came in. The firelight touched his face, showing tiredness around his eyes, but also something like relief. Amelia, he said, thank you for coming. She curtsied. You sent for me, Your Highness. I did, he said. Close the door behind you, if you please. Her hand felt oddly heavy as she reached back and pushed it until it clicked shut. She stood, unsure where to go. She had never been in the room with him at this hour, alone. Come nearer, he said. Not too near, or Mrs. Fairchild will storm the door, but near enough that I need not raise my voice. A faint smile touched his mouth at his own jest. It eased her tension a little. She moved to stand a few steps away, hands clasped. He gestured to a straight-back chair against the wall. Bring that here, he said. You may sit. I'm informed that talking to someone who is standing makes one feel like a magistrate, and I am weary of courts. She hesitated. Sit, Your Highness. It will distress me if you fall down in a faint, he said quietly. Sit, Amelia. She obeyed, drawing the chair forward and perching on the edge. It felt unnatural to sit while he did. He watched her for a moment, studying her face. You look as though you expect a sentence, he said. Have I become so fearsome? No, Your Highness, she said quickly. Only, I do not know why you have called me. That is fair, he said. He turned his head slightly, looking toward the fire. Nor do I know where to begin, so perhaps we will start with what is simplest. He paused, then looked back at her. I wish to ask whether you are well after that unhappy little performance this afternoon. She blinked. Performance, Your Highness. The tea, he said. Lady Charlotte's gown. The great disaster. Heat rose to her cheeks. I am sorry, Your Highness. I meant no disrespect to your guest. I was careless. You were a servant carrying tea in a crowded room, he said. If anyone was careless, it was whoever thought to place a fragile cup near the edge of the table. That was I, she admitted. He winced lightly. You do not make it easy to defend you, Amelia. I am used to my own mistakes, she said. They follow me. For what it is worth, he said, I thought Lady Charlotte spoke more sharply than the situation warranted. She is a lady, Amelia said softly. She has the right. And you are not a stone on the floor, he replied. You are a person with feelings. Titles do not cancel that. His tone was gentle, not angry, but it startled her. I have been in rooms like that all my life, he went on. I know how words can be used like pins and needles, drawing blood without leaving a mark one can point to. I do not enjoy seeing it. She will forget it soon, Amelia said. I will not trouble you about it. But it troubled you, he said. She did not answer. I called you here, he said quietly, because I realized in that moment that you are being drawn into the current of things you did not ask for. Her fingers tightened in her lap. I do not understand, Your Highness. You do, he said without reproach, or at least you understand that something has changed around you. People look when you pass. They speak your name when they think you do not hear. They drag you to court teas like a prop in a play. She swallowed. I am only a maid, Your Highness. You are, he agreed. And yet you are also something else now. You are the woman who brings my drafts, who straightens my cushions, who hears me when the physicians are gone. That, it seems, is enough to turn you into a subject of interest. It is not my wish to give offense, she said. If my presence causes trouble, you may ask Mrs. Fairchild to send someone else. I will not be angry. I never asked to be in your chambers. Did you not? He asked, and there was an odd note in his voice. She flushed. I mean, I did not seek it. Mrs. Fairchild told me I was reassigned. I obeyed. That is all. That is all, he repeated. And yet nothing is ever only that, not in a house like this. He leaned back in his chair, wincing slightly at the movement. Tell me, Amelia, he said, when you were in the bedchamber the other day, and my advisors were here, how much did you hear? Her breath caught. Nothing that was not for my ears, Your Highness, she said quickly. That is a careful answer, he said, and not quite honest. She stared at her hands. It is not my place to repeat what I hear. I am not asking you to repeat it, he said, only to admit to yourself that you heard enough to be troubled. She hesitated, then nodded once. You heard them speak of my cousin, he said, of succession, of my lack of a wife and child. You heard them say things are uncertain. Yes, she whispered. You heard them speak your name, he said. Her head came up. Their eyes met. Yes, Your Highness, she said. I heard that also. He did not look surprised. If anything, he looked more tired. I thought as much, he said. They have grown careless, or perhaps they assumed you were too far away. I did not mean to listen, she said. The door was open. Their voices were... I know, he said. You did nothing wrong. She clasped her hands tighter. Why did they speak of me, Your Highness? He was silent for a long moment. The fire popped softly. A log shifted, sending a brief flurry of sparks up the chimney. Because, he said at last, they are afraid. Of what? She asked. Of emptiness, he said. Of a throne with no clear occupant, of a kingdom without a name to shout in the streets when the bells ring. Men like that fear a vacuum more than they fear illness, or grief, or even injustice. They think only, what comes next, and how do we shape it? She listened, hardly daring to breathe. They see my health, he went on, and they count months. They look at my hand and see no ring. They look behind me and see no child. To them, that is a crisis. And so they look for solutions as they would look for new chairs in a storeroom. He gave a small, humorless smile. They think, he said, that if they could persuade me to leave behind a child, certain questions would disappear. They think a crown on a baby's head someday will wipe away their worries, and in their minds, that is worth anything. Anything, she repeated. Yes, he said, including dragging an innocent girl into their calculations. Her throat felt tight. You stopped them. I tried, he said. I told them to leave you out of their schemes. I told them you were here to bring me tea, not to shoulder the future of Wessex. They did not like it. Men like that never do when someone refuses to treat lives like chess pieces. She let out a shaky breath. Thank you, Your Highness. It is not thanks I want, he said quietly. What then? She asked. Understanding, he replied, because the truth is, Amelia, that though I sent them away that day, their words did not entirely leave my mind. She stared at him, puzzled. I do not follow, Your Highness. He ran a hand over his face as if seeking courage. When a man is told he has 6 months to live, he said, he starts to count differently. He counts hours with his physicians. He counts letters he will not have time to answer. He counts faces he will not see grow older. He paused. And he counts the promises he will break, simply by dying. She swallowed. Promises, Your Highness? I was born to certain expectations, he said. To rule, to protect, to see that the people have peace, to ensure that when my time ends, there is someone ready to take my place so that the realm does not fall into quarrel. That is what they put in my cradle, along with the lace. He looked at her, a touch of wryness in his eyes. "Now they tell me that cradle was premature," he said, "that the bed they prepared for my old age will remain empty. That time has shortened itself to half a year, perhaps less." "I am sorry," she whispered. "Do not be," he said. "You did not do this. I do not speak for pity, only because I find I have no one with whom to speak plainly." She wanted to say, "You have advisers, you have uncles, you have Lady Charlotte," but the words would not come. Somehow she knew it was not the same. "So," he went on, "I asked myself a question I have never allowed before. If my life is brief, must all my duties die with me? Or is there one thing I can still do for the future, even if I never see it?" He glanced at the fire again, the flames reflected in his eyes. "The council," he said, "has suggested various paths, none of them clean. They propose hurried alliances. They hint at arrangements that skirt the edges of propriety. They speak of names, of titles, of legacies written on paper." "And what do you think, Your Highness?" she asked. "I think," he said quietly, "that a child is not a line on a page. A child is a person. He or she will wake at night and cry, will need hands to guide them, eyes to meet them, a voice to tell them who they are. So if I were to leave a child behind me, it could not be to satisfy the council. It would have to be because there was someone I trusted to raise that child with more care than ambition." He looked at her then directly. There was no heat in his gaze, no boldness, only an earnest, searching light. "Someone like you," he said. Her heart lurched. "Your Highness," she stammered, "I do not understand." "Yes, you do," he said gently. "You heard them speak. You know what sort of solution they are circling. They would choose some discreet lady of minor birth, give her a stipend, hide her away, and bring the child forward when convenient. They would pretend it was all destiny, not design." He shook his head. "I refuse to make a life the result of such cold calculations." "And yet," she said, voice trembling. "And yet," he agreed, "my duty whispers to me at night. It asks, can you not do this one last thing? Can you not leave a thread for the future to hold?" She felt as though the chair had vanished under her. "Your Highness, I have never—" His gaze softened. "I know." She shook her head, words tumbling. "I am a servant. I have no learning for such matters. I could not teach a child to be a prince. People would laugh. They would say I had put my hand where it did not belong. They already think I stand too near you when I pour tea." "They would be wrong," he said. "You have more sense and kindness than half the court. And as for learning, that can be given. You already know how to work, how to listen. Those are lessons many noble children never receive." Tears stung her eyes. "They would not see it that way." "No," he said, "they would not. Which is why, if I were to ask such a thing of you, I would have to promise you certain protections. I would have to use what remains of my authority to see that you were not cast aside or insulted beyond bearing, that any child of mine grew up recognized and safe, not whispered about like some scandal." "If," she repeated faintly. "Yes," he said. "If." He took a breath, then another, as if the words ahead cost him something. "Amelia," he said quietly, "I find that I must speak plainly, even if it shames me. I have grown fond of you." Her lips parted. "Your Highness." "Hush," he said, not unkindly. "Let me finish, or I may never have the courage to begin again." She folded her hands tighter and remained silent. "You came into these rooms," he said, "as a shadow, carrying trays. You were careful not to look at me. You flinched when I spoke your name. And yet, in your small, steady way, you have become a comfort. When you straighten my pillows, you do not fuss. When I cough, you do not wince. When I speak foolishly, you smile only a little. You treat me not as a dying symbol, but as a man sitting in a chair. You cannot know what that does to me." Her heart beat faster, each word dropping like a pebble into still water. "I do not know if you care for me," he said. "Perhaps you see me only as your duty. Perhaps you pity me. Perhaps you do feel something more. I cannot read your heart. But I know mine has begun to look for you at the door, to listen for your steps. I know that when others speak of heirs and futures, it is your face that comes to mind, not theirs." She could not speak. If she did, she was afraid her voice would break. "So," he said, "I find myself in a cruel position. I wish more than I can say that I had years ahead. That I could court you as a healthy man, offer you a future of quiet days, not a half-year of watching a candle burn down. I cannot. All I have is what I am. A dying prince with a kingdom to think of, and a heart that has, inexplicably, chosen a maid. His hand tightened on the arm of his chair. His knuckles paled. What I am about to ask, he said, is not a command. It is not an expectation. It is a question. You may say no. You may leave this room and I will see to it you are sent somewhere else, somewhere where the whispers cannot reach you. You owe me nothing. Do you understand? She nodded, mute. He looked straight into her eyes. Would you, he asked, voice low but steady, consider giving me what you have never given any man? Would you consider, of your own free will, allowing there to be a child of mine in this world? A child you would raise and love and protect, even when I am gone? Her hands flew to her mouth as if to hold back a cry. Your Highness, she whispered, you ask me to— Yes, he said, to share your body and your future with me, to risk your reputation, your safety, your heart. It is an enormous thing, I know that. I am ashamed to ask it, and yet I cannot pretend I do not wish it, for the kingdom, and for myself. Tears spilled over now, hot on her cheeks. I have never, she stammered. No one has ever looked at me that way. No one has ever wanted me for anything more than clean sheets and swept floors. He closed his eyes briefly, as if in pain. I do not wish you to think I value you only as a vessel for my blood. If there were no kingdom, if I were a farmer with a small field and 6 months to live, I believe I would still look at you and think, here is a woman I would have loved, if the world had been kinder. She pressed her palms together. What would become of me, of the child, when you are gone? I would make arrangements, he said at once. You would not be left to the mercy of gossip. There are estates that can be settled on you, incomes that can be assigned. I would have the council sign and seal documents recognizing any child of mine as my heir. They would hate it, she said. Some would, he agreed. Some already hate that I breathe. Hatred is cheap in courts, but a signed paper and a royal declaration are harder to hate in public. She gave a shaky laugh that sounded more like a sob. You speak of it so simply. It is not simple, he said. It is impossible. Or it would be, if you did not exist. Silence stretched between them. Amelia stared at the floor at the edge of the rug at her own shoes. The weight of what he had asked pressed on her from all sides. Her purity had always been like the walls of the castle itself, solid, unquestioned, part of the structure of her life. Not because she had vowed anything or made some grand decision, but because no opportunity had ever appeared. Men did not look at her. No one had ever spoken to her with warmth in his eyes and said her name the way the prince just had. She was a maid. Maids married sometimes, if they were lucky, boys from the stable or tradesmen from the town. They had children, and those children became servants or small shopkeepers. That was the path she knew. Now, in one night, the prince had placed a different road at her feet, one that led into fog. She forced herself to speak. You ask much, she said quietly. I know, he replied. You ask me to give up any hope of an ordinary husband, she said. Who would want a woman who had belonged to a prince and borne his child? They would think I had aimed above myself. They would never believe it was. It was asked of me, not taken. I would not let you go back to scrubbing floors as if nothing had happened, he said. I would see you treated with respect. By some, she said. Others would call me names I do not wish to repeat. They would say I had used you, or that you had used me. They would whisper when I walked by with the child. They would wonder who I thought I was. They already whisper, he said softly. That was true. She had heard her name in corners, in kitchens, in corridors. The prince's maid, the one in his rooms. It would not be only my life that changed, she said. It would be the child's. He, or she, would grow up with half the court waiting to see a flaw. They would judge every step, every word. Yes, he said. And yet that child would also have the chance to sit where I sit now, to rule. To do good I will not have time to do. I do not know how to raise a ruler, she whispered. You know how to love, he said. I have seen it in the way you fold blankets, in the way you lower your voice when my head aches. The rest can be taught by tutors and ministers. Love cannot. Her throat closed. He leaned forward a little, his breath unsteady. I do not want an answer tonight, he said. It would be wrong of me to press you in a single conversation. I have had weeks to think of this. You have had minutes. Take time. Pray if you pray. Speak to no one. You cannot. But speak to your own heart. Ask what you can bear. If you decide you cannot, I will accept it. I swear to you." She drew in a ragged breath. "And if I say yes, then," he said, "we will find a way, within the bounds of decency and your comfort, to honor that choice. Gently, without spectacle, without haste. We will let nature decide whether a child comes, and whatever happens, I will honor you for the rest of my days." Her hands trembled. She hid them in her skirts. "You must also consider," he added, a trace of bitterness in his voice, "that I may not live even 6 months. Doctors are not gods. It may be that you would be left to carry that child alone almost at once. You must ask yourself if you are strong enough for that. I cannot answer for you." She thought of walking through the castle with a round belly, of climbing the hill behind her parents' house with a small hand in hers. She thought of that child asking, "Where is my father?" and of answering, "He was a good man, but he had to go away." Her chest ached. "May I ask one thing?" she said, barely audible. "Anything," he replied. "If I say no," she whispered, will you hate me?" His eyes softened so much it almost hurt to look at them. "No," he said. "I will grieve. For the future that might have been, for the child I will not meet, for the selfish wish of my heart. But I will not hate you. How could I hate someone who has already given me more kindness than many who have known me all my life?" She nodded slowly. "May I go now, Your Highness?" she asked. "Yes," he said. "You have borne enough for one evening. Go, Amelia. Rest. Tomorrow we will speak of ordinary things again. I will not ask you for your answer until you offer it." She rose unsteady on her feet. For a moment she thought she might reach out, touch his hand, say something comforting. But the distance between Prince and Maid reared up like a wall, and she let her arms hang at her sides. She curtsied, head bowed. "Good night, Your Highness." "Good night, Amelia," he said. She turned and walked to the door. Her hand shook on the handle. She slipped out into the dim antechamber, then into the corridor beyond. The air felt cooler there, almost sharp. Her mind whirled. Prince, child, choice, duty, love. Words tangled until they no longer made sense. She walked without seeing where she went, trusting her feet to know the way. The castle seemed both familiar and strange, as if every door hid people whispering her name. As she rounded a corner near a tall window, she nearly collided with a man coming the other way. "I beg your pardon," she gasped, stepping back. "No harm done," the man said. She looked up quickly. He was tall, well-dressed, with fair hair and eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled. She recognized him at once. She had seen him in the great hall, at a distance, laughing with a group of gentlemen. "Lord Henry." "The prince's maid, is it not?" he said pleasantly. "Amelia, I believe. You seem to be spending quite a lot of time near my dear cousin these days." Amelia's feet seemed to root to the floor. "Yes, my lord," she said quickly. "I serve in His Highness's chambers." Henry smiled, easy and bright. "So I have heard." He did not move aside at once. The corridor was wide, but somehow his presence filled it. "It is late for a maid to be wandering these halls," he said. "Has my cousin taken to giving instructions by candlelight?" "I was dismissed for the evening, my lord," she said. "I am returning below stairs." "From his rooms," Henry said, as if gently correcting her. Alone, her cheeks warmed. His Highness had need of no other attendance at the time. "No physician?" Henry asked mildly. "No adviser, no Mrs. Fairchild standing guard like a general?" "Only myself, my lord," she said. He tilted his head, studying her. "You must forgive me. My concern for Edward has grown since the physician's announcement. I take an interest in anyone who spends time at his side." "I am only there to serve, my lord," Amelia said. "Oh, I do not doubt your humility," he replied. "I have seen servants who thought themselves queens. You do not look like one of them." She did not know whether that was meant kindly or not. "I hope His Highness is not keeping you from rest," he went on. "A girl like you must grow tired, running back and forth for his draughts and pillows and whatever else he demands." "He demands very little," she said quietly. "He is considerate." Henry's smile thinned just a fraction. Yes, that is always the trouble with Edward. He thinks of everyone but himself. The council must do the sharper work for him. He stepped a little closer, though still at a polite distance. "Tell me, Amelia," he said, "has he seemed weaker to you lately?" She hesitated. "I am not trained to judge such things, my lord." "But you have eyes," Henry said gently, "and you see him more than I. Does he cough? Does he tire easily? Does he speak of pain?" Her fingers twisted together. "I cannot repeat His Highness's conversations, my lord. Mrs. Fairchild forbade it." "So dutiful," Henry murmured. "It will serve you well, but understand this." His voice softened, though his eyes were keen. "Many paths are opening and closing around us now. You walk near the center of them, whether you wish it or not." She swallowed. "I do not seek any path, my lord. I only follow where I am told." "Do you?" he asked. "Always?" She met his gaze for the first time, startled. "That is what maids do," she said. "We obey." He held her eyes a moment longer, then smiled again, easy as before. "Of course," he said. "Forgive my questions, I merely worry. Edward has so few he can lean on. I hope those who attend him are good for him." "I do my best, my lord," she said. "I'm sure you do," he replied. "If you ever feel out of your depth, you may speak to Mrs. Fairchild. Or to me, if chance allows. I am not entirely a monster." She almost smiled, because the words sounded familiar. The prince had said nearly the same. "Good night, my lord," she said, stepping aside. "Good night, Amelia," he said. "Rest. You will need your strength." She descended the stairs, with his last words clinging to her. You will need your strength. For what? Sleep was a stranger that night. She lay awake in the narrow bed under the eaves, listening to the soft breathing and small sighs of the other maids. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the prince's face in the firelight, heard his voice asking, "Would you consider—" By dawn, her eyes burned. Still, work did not wait. Morning came with its usual clatter. Amelia moved through her chores like someone half underwater. She spilled nothing, broke nothing, answered when spoken to, but her mind was elsewhere. In the prince's chambers, she found him seated at the window again, looking pale but composed. The lamplight of the night before seemed a dream. "Good morning, Amelia," he said. "Good morning, Your Highness," she replied. She poured tea. Their hands did not touch. Her heart pounded anyway. "Did you sleep?" he asked. "A little, Your Highness," she said. "So did I," he answered softly. "More than I expected." He said nothing more about their conversation. He spoke of the weather, of a book he had tried and disliked, of a letter from an aunt who used far too many words to say very little. Amelia answered where politeness required, but a thicker silence lay under their words. He was giving her room. It pained her and relieved her at once. Days passed like that. He kept his promise. He did not press. He did not even look at her in a way that suggested a question, but she felt it there, unspoken, every time she entered his room. At night, she lay awake, hearing two voices in her head. One was her own, small and frightened. "You will be ruined. They will call you names. You will never be anything but the prince's folly. You are not meant for such a life." The other was quieter but steady. "He is alone. He is dying. He asked you, not as a prince but as a man. You care for him. You know you do. You can give him something no council paper ever could." She tried to push both aside. She failed. One afternoon she found Mrs. Linden alone in the linen room, mending a tear in a tablecloth. "Mrs. Linden," Amelia said softly. The older woman looked up. "Yes, child?" "May I ask you something?" Amelia said. "Not about work." Mrs. Linden's eyes sharpened. "Sit down then." Amelia sat on a low stool, twisting her hands. "If someone," she began slowly, "were asked to do something very large for another person, something that would change her whole life, something people might not understand, what should she do?" Mrs. Linden's needle paused. "That is a wide question," she said. "Who is the other person?" "Someone who has little time left," Amelia said. "Someone who has been kind. Someone the world watches." "Ah," Mrs. Linden murmured. "And the something? Is it wicked? Is it cruel? Would it harm others?" "No," Amelia said quickly. "At least, I do not think so. It might even help many, but it would bring whispers. And the person asked would be looked at. Mrs. Linden nodded slowly. When you are old, child, you find there are two kinds of choices. The kind that make your life easy, and the kind that make your life meaningful. They are not often the same. I am afraid, Amelia confessed. Of what? Mrs. Linden asked. Of being wrong, she said. Of regretting it. Of being alone with no way to go back. Mrs. Linden set down the cloth and looked directly at her. There is no way to live without regret, she said. Even if you choose the small safe path, you will one day wonder, what if I had dared? The question is not whether you will regret, but which regret you can bear. I do not understand, Amelia whispered. If you say no, and the person goes to their grave with their wish unfulfilled, will you lie awake wondering if you stole something from them? Mrs. Linden asked. If you say yes and the world turns its back on you, will you lie awake wishing you had chosen comfort over courage? Only you can answer which ache is heavier in your chest. But I am only a servant, Amelia said. Mrs. Linden smiled faintly. The world is changed more often by servants than by kings. We just do not get our names in the books. Amelia swallowed. What if the person asked grows to love the one asking? That is both blessing and trouble, Mrs. Linden said. Love makes hard things easier to do, and hard things harder to bear. But I will say this. If love is involved, you must listen to it more than to fear. Fear will keep you breathing. Love will keep you alive. Amelia's eyes stung. Thank you, she murmured. Do not thank me yet, Mrs. Linden said briskly. I have not told you what to do. I cannot. I am only an old woman with bad knees. But if you decide to step into the fire, do it with your head high. Do not crawl and then complain you are burned. That evening, when her tasks were done, Amelia slipped away to the small chapel tucked behind the main hall. Few people used it at that hour. A single candle burned by the altar, its flame steady. She knelt without quite knowing what words to use. She had never been taught long prayers. Her childhood had been full of simple ones. Please let the crops grow. Please keep mother well. Please let father's cough go away. Now she whispered, more to the silence than to anything she could name. Please, she said, show me if I am meant to say yes, or if I am meant to say no and live with it. He is good. He is afraid. I am afraid. I do not know what is right. I only know that when he looks at me, I feel seen. The silence did not answer. The candle flickered once, then steadied. She stayed until her knees ached, then rose and went back to the servants' hall. A strange calm had settled under her fear. Not an answer exactly. More like a sense that whatever she chose, she must choose fully. The next morning she woke with that calm still in her. The fear was there too, like a hand on her shoulder, but it no longer pushed her forward and back. It merely waited. She dressed, tied her apron, and went about her tasks. When the time came to carry the morning tray to the prince, she took it with hands that trembled only a little. In his sitting room, he was alone. The window stood open a crack, letting in a faint breeze. He sat with a blanket over his knees, a book closed on his lap. "Good morning, Amelia," he said. "Good morning, Your Highness," she replied. She set the tray down, poured the tea, and placed the cup within his reach. He watched her in silence. "Will you sit?" he asked. She swallowed. "If it please Your Highness." "It would," he said. She brought the chair as before, and sat. For a moment neither spoke. "Have you come with an answer?" he asked at last. "Yes," she said. He drew a slow breath. His fingers tightened slightly on the book's leather cover. "Before you speak it," he said, "know again that you owe me nothing. If you say no, I will not ask again." "I know," she said. "That is why I can speak." He nodded once. "Then, what does your heart tell you?" She looked at him, really looked, at the lines of weariness, at the strength still in his eyes. "It tells me," she said slowly, "that I am afraid. I am afraid of what people will say. I am afraid of losing any chance of an ordinary life. I am afraid of watching you fade day by day." His throat moved. "But it also tells me," she went on, "that I already ache when I think of you going into the dark alone. When I imagine a child who might never exist, who might have your eyes and your kindness and your stubbornness, I feel something pull inside me." She drew a breath. "If there is to be such a child," she said, "I would rather it be mine to hold. And if I am to bear the weight of whispers, I would rather bear them for you than for any other man. His eyes brightened with a sheen she had never seen. Are you saying, he began. I am saying yes, she said, voice trembling. I will do as you asked. Not because the council wants it, not because the kingdom shouts for an heir, because you asked me as a man who is lonely and afraid, and because I care for you. He closed his eyes, and for a moment his face looked almost boyish, stripped of all the roles. When he opened them again, they were full of gratitude. Amelia, he said, I have no words that do not sound small. You are the prince, she said, attempting a faint smile. Your words are never small. Oh, they are, he said. They are very small, next to what you have just given me. He reached out, then stopped himself, his hand hanging uncertainly between them. May I? He asked. She nodded. His fingers brushed hers, then took her hand gently, as if it was something fragile and precious. The touch sent a quiet warmth up her arm. I swear, he said, that I will do everything in my power to see that you are honored, not shamed, that any child of ours is protected, that your name is spoken with respect in these halls. I believe you, she said. You must also understand, he added, that some will never accept it in their hearts, no matter what I decree. You will feel their looks, their coldness. I have felt cold looks my whole life, she said softly. It will not be new. What is new is being chosen. His smile wavered, but did not fade. Then we are both chosen. I did not expect to find such courage in this room. She squeezed his hand once, and then let go, afraid to trust herself with longer contact. What must we do? She asked. First, he said, I must speak to the council, not all of them. Only those whose signatures matter. I must have documents drawn that state in clear terms that any child of mine is my recognized heir, regardless of the mother's birth. That will not be easy, but it is possible. My father made certain allowances in law years ago for reasons of his own. I can use them. And about me? She asked. He hesitated. There are options. I could keep you officially as a servant with special provisions in my will, but that would leave you exposed. I would prefer to do something bolder. Boldness has not been kind to me in drawing rooms, she said. He actually laughed, a small, surprised sound. No, but there is a difference between a tea table and a chapel. She stared. A chapel? Yes, he said. I intend, if you agree, to marry you. Quietly, without trumpets or public announcements. A private ceremony, witnessed only by a few. The law of Wessex allows for what they call a morganatic union. It means that you will be my wife in truth, though the court may not give you the title of princess. Our child, however, can still be named heir by my declaration. Her heart stumbled. Your wife, if you will have me, he said. I cannot give you decades. I can give you my name, my promise, and what affection remains in this tired heart. It seems wrong to ask you to bear a child for me and not offer you my hand as well. She thought of standing beside him before an altar, their hands joined. The image frightened her, but it also steadied her. Yes, she said quietly, if I am to belong to you in one way, let it be holy. I will marry you. He drew in a sharp breath. You say it so simply. I am afraid if I add more words I will lose my nerve, she said. Then we will keep the words few, he said. By afternoon he had sent discreet messages to 3 men, the elder adviser, a trusted judge, and Lord Henry. When they arrived, they found him dressed with a formality he had not bothered with for days. Amelia was not present. He had asked her to stay away for this. Your Highness, the elder adviser said, bowing. You wish to see us? Yes, Edward said. Sit. We have matters to discuss, and my breath is not what it was. They obeyed. Henry watched his cousin with careful interest. This concerns the succession, Edward said, and my personal affairs. Henry's brows rose slightly. Personal? Yes, Edward said. I will speak plainly. The physicians tell me I may not see the end of the year. The council wrings its hands about heirs. Families with daughters of suitable rank look away. I have no wish to marry some unwilling lady only to leave her widowed in 6 months, nor do I intend to see Wessex torn between factions when I am gone. The adviser shifted. We share your concern, Your Highness. I know, Edward said. You have made it known. He leaned forward a little. I have made a decision, he went on. I intend to enter into a private marriage with Amelia, the maid currently in my service. The judge inhaled sharply. The advisor opened his mouth, then closed it. Henry's expression barely changed, but his eyes sharpened. Amelia, he repeated. The girl who brings your tea. The same, Edward said calmly. Your Highness, the advisor began. With respect, she is of no family. The court will never— The law, Edward interrupted, permits me to marry where I choose, provided I accept the consequences. I am not asking the court to hail her as princess. I am asking you, he looked at the judge, to witness a legal union, so that she is not left as some discarded mistress when I die. The judge cleared his throat. The statutes your late father enacted do allow for a morganatic union, Your Highness. The spouse receives limited rank and protection, but not full royal privileges. Any issue, any children, may be named heir at your discretion, though it is unusual. Unusual, Edward said, is another word for necessary when the times demand it. Henry spoke at last. Cousin, he said slowly, have you considered what they will say? Not merely in these walls, but in the countryside, in London, in every house where people talk of Wessex. You will be seen as a man who threw over every noble lady in the land for a maid. Yes, Edward said. And they will also, I hope, see me as a man who honored the woman he loved, rather than using her in the dark and leaving her nameless. The word loved hung in the air. Henry's gaze flickered. You love her. Yes, Edward said simply, and I trust her. I would not place the future of Wessex in hands I did not trust. The advisor rubbed his forehead. Even so, Your Highness, the council, Edward said, is not the crown, not yet. I am. For as long as I breathe, my word has weight. I am not asking your permission. I am informing you of my intention, and I require your service to make it lawful. The room fell quiet. At last, the judge bowed his head. Very well, Your Highness. If you wish it so, I will draw up the necessary documents. We must be precise. If any child is to inherit, there must be no room for dispute. Thank you, Edward said. The advisor looked resigned. If we oppose you now, we will only create more scandal. Better to help you do this cleanly than to have it done in secret. Henry studied his cousin. For a moment something like hurt crossed his face, quickly masked. And if there is no child? Henry asked softly. If time runs out? Then, Edward said, you will have your chance to wear the crown, with the blessing of knowing that I did all I could. Silence stretched again. Henry inclined his head. Then I will stand by your choice, he said. I will sign what must be signed, and I will not speak against Amelia. She will need allies. Edward's shoulders eased slightly. She will, he said. Thank you. By the end of the week, papers lay on the table in the prince's study, thick with seals and signatures. Edward signed with a steady hand, despite the cough that shook him afterward. 2 days later, in the small chapel Amelia had visited alone, a quiet ceremony took place. There were no flowers, no music beyond a single hymn hummed by the chaplain under his breath. The judge stood as witness, along with Mrs. Fairchild and Henry. Amelia wore her best dress, the one she had saved from her early wages, washed and pressed until the fabric felt almost new. Her hands trembled, but when the chaplain asked, "Do you, Amelia Grace Turner, take Edward, Prince of Wessex, to be your lawful wedded husband?" her voice was clear. "I do," she said. When the question turned to Edward, his answer was just as firm. "I do." They exchanged simple rings, plain gold bands that glinted softly in the candlelight. When the chaplain pronounced them husband and wife, Edward looked at her with a tenderness that made her forget the others in the room. Afterward, Henry approached her, bowing slightly. "Your Highness," he said, then corrected himself. "Forgive me. I do not yet know the proper address." "I do not either," Amelia said with a nervous little laugh. He smiled. "Then I will keep it to Amelia for now. May you find happiness in the time you have." "Thank you, my lord," she said. "Mrs." Fairchild squeezed her hand as they left the chapel. "Remember what you are," the housekeeper murmured. "You are still the girl who knows how to fold a sheet straight. Do not let silk blind you, or stone floors humble you. Walk as yourself, whatever they call you." "I will try," Amelia replied. Life did not transform overnight. The next morning she still rose early. She still helped in the servants' wing before going upstairs. But when she entered the prince's chambers now, The footman stepped aside with a different sort of deference in his eyes. "Your ma'am," he stammered. "Amelia is enough," she said gently. Edward sat waiting, and when she came in, he smiled in a way that felt like coming home. "Good morning," he said. "My wife." The word sent a warm, strange flutter through her. "Good morning," she replied. "My husband." They both laughed softly at how unfamiliar the words felt in their mouths. They did not speak in detail about what lay ahead. Some evenings, after the servants withdrew and the lamps burned low, they sat closer than before, hands joined, shoulders nearly touching. He would rest his head back, eyes closed, and she would listen to the sound of his breathing. The council moved quietly around them. The judge filed the necessary documents. The elder advisor began adjusting his speeches to include the possibility of any future heir. Henry divided his time between the council chamber and the estate office, learning more of the kingdom's affairs, in case they fell to him after all. In the servants' hall, gossip flared and then settled. "They say she is his wife now," one girl whispered. "Not a real wife," another sniffed. "No crown, no balls." "She wears a ring," Mrs. Linden said, "and he calls her by a name he never used for anyone else. That is as real as it gets." Amelia learned to walk a narrow path. She was not quite a servant, not quite a lady. Some curtsied too deeply, others not at all. She thanked those who treated her kindly and ignored the rest. The only time she allowed herself to think of what they had done, that quiet ceremony, that private vow, was when she sat with Edward, their hands entwined, talking of small things. One evening, as the light faded and the first chill of autumn crept under the window, he looked at her with a softness that made her throat ache. "Whatever comes," he said, "I am glad of this." "Of what?" she asked. "Of not being alone," he said. "Of knowing that when I am gone, there will be someone in this castle who remembers me as a man, not as a patient or a symbol." "I will remember," she said, "every word." He smiled faintly. "You will have your hands full with other memories, I hope." She felt heat rise to her cheeks. "We must leave that to Providence." "Yes," he said, "to Providence, and perhaps to patience." They fell into a quiet then, watching the last strip of sky darken. For the first time since the physicians had spoken, the future no longer felt like a sheer cliff to Amelia. It felt like a narrow, rocky path, to be sure, full of sharp edges. But she was not walking it alone. As the fire burned low, she rested her hand over his. He turned his palm up to lace their fingers together. In that simple gesture, there was a promise that whatever time remained, they would face it side by side. Winter came quietly that year, as if it did not wish to disturb the prince. The first frost crept across the castle lawns, a thin white veil that melted by noon. Amelia watched it from the window of Edward's sitting room, one hand resting on the back of his chair. "You are frowning," he said. "I am thinking," she answered. "Of what?" he asked. "The state of the kingdom, the latest council quarrel, the cook's temper." She smiled faintly. "None of those, Your Highness. You have not called me that in days," he said. "You have grown far too respectful this morning." She hesitated. "Edward." "Yes," he said, turning his head a little to look up at her. "There, better. Now tell me what troubles you." She hesitated, fingers curling over the wood. "Do you remember," she began, "how you told me I must tell you anything that concerns you, even if I am afraid?" "I do," he said. "I recall thinking how brave I was to say it, and how much I would regret it when you told me something terrifying." "It may be terrifying," she said softly. He set his book aside at once. "Sit, Amelia." She sat, heart beating fast. "Whatever it is," he said, "I wish to hear it. We are in this together, are we not?" "Yes," she whispered. "Then speak," he said. She took a breath. "The physician saw me this morning," she said. His brow furrowed. "Are you unwell?" "No," she said quickly. "At least, I do not think so. I told him that I had been tired, that sometimes the smell of breakfast turned my stomach, that my gowns seemed to fit differently, though cook says she has not shrunk them in the wash." Edward's eyes widened slightly. "And he asked me many questions," she said. Then he smiled, and that frightened me more than if he had looked grave. Edward's hand closed over hers, sudden and warm. "Amelia." She met his gaze. "He says," she whispered, that if all continues as it has begun, by the time the snow melts, our child will be here. For a heartbeat, he did not move. Then his fingers tightened on hers so hard it almost hurt. Our child, he repeated, as if testing the words. And are you certain? She nodded, tears springing to her eyes. He says it is early yet, and that I must be cautious. But yes, I am with child. He let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. A child. She nodded. He rose from his chair as if forgetting his weakness, then steadied himself with a hand on the arm. Sit, she said quickly. You must not... Must not what? He asked, his voice unsteady. Rejoice? I am tired of being told where my joy must stop. She stood with him, one hand hovering near his arm in case he wavered. You are pale, she said. I have been pale for months, he answered. It is my favorite color now. He placed his free hand gently on her middle, barely touching, as if afraid. May I? He asked. You need not ask, she said, voice trembling. His palm rested there, warm through the fabric. There is someone there, he murmured. Someone small. Someone who will never hear the physicians tell him his life is measured in months. Or her, Amelia said, a tear slipping free. It may be a girl. Then she shall never be told she must be silent because of where she was born, he said. She will hear different words in this house. Amelia laughed through her tears. How you speak as if we will be old and grey together, scolding our grown children. Let me dream a little, he said. I have been scolded enough for being realistic. She sobered. The physician says I must rest more, that I must not carry heavy things, that I must not climb too many stairs. Then you shall not, he said at once. We will move you nearer. We will assign others to fetch and carry. You will walk only as you wish, and sit when you please. If anyone complains, I will tell them the future of Wessex prefers that my wife remain on her feet. She smiled. Is it right to use the kingdom in such arguments? It is right to use everything at my disposal to keep you safe, he said simply. He drew her into a careful embrace, his cheek against her hair. Thank you, he whispered, for saying yes, for bearing this, for giving me more than any crown ever has. She closed her eyes. We have not done anything yet. The months are long ahead, longer than the ones behind, he said. That is more than I expected when the doctors first spoke. He was right. Something had shifted in him. The cough still came, but not as fierce. The tightness in his chest still troubled him, but less often. He tired quickly, but less desperately. It was as if now that his future had a face other than empty sky, his body had decided to hold on. That afternoon he sent for Henry and the elder advisor. They came at once, faces curious. So you have news, Your Highness? The advisor asked. I do, Edward said. Sit. They obeyed. Amelia sat in the corner, hands folded, heart fluttering. Edward had asked her to be present. I wished to inform you, Edward said, that my wife is with child. The advisor's mouth fell open. Henry's eyes flashed. The physician has confirmed it, Edward went on. It is early, but he is confident. Your Highness, the advisor breathed. This is beyond hope. It is precisely hope, Edward corrected. And as you both signed the documents regarding succession, you know what it means. Henry recovered first. He rose and came to stand before Edward. Cousin, he said, and there was no mockery, only a rough sincerity. Allow me to be the first to offer my congratulations. Edward looked at him sharply, as if searching for irony. You are not disappointed, he asked. Disappointed? Henry echoed. I have half expected for months to hear bells toll for your death and my responsibility. It has sat ill with me. I would rather be an uncle to a future ruler than a king over a kingdom that mourned you. He turned to Amelia and bowed more deeply than he had before. Lady Amelia, he said, forgive me. I know no better title for you yet. You have done what none of us could. You have given Wessex a future. She felt her cheeks burn. It is not only for Wessex, my lord, she said. It is for him, and for the child. Henry smiled. Of course. The advisor found his voice at last. This will calm the council greatly, Your Highness, he said. There will be some muttering, of course. There always is. But a living heir will silence most tongues. We will not know whether he is living for some months yet, Edward said quietly. Let us not count the child before he, or she, is born. Forgive me, the advisor said at once. I meant no disrespect. We must also consider another matter, Henry said. The people. They have heard the doctor's verdict. They know you're not expected to live long. They must now hear something else, or they will imagine all manner of tales. They imagine enough already, Edward said. Very well, draft a proclamation, plain words, no frills. Tell them their prince has taken a wife. Tell them that wife is of humble birth, and that it was his choice. Tell them she is with child, whom he claims as heir. Tell them that this is the will of the crown, and that we ask their prayers. That will cause uproar, the advisor murmured. Yes, Edward said, but not the kind that destroys, the kind that talks. And talking is better than frightened silence. Within days, the proclamation went out. Messengers carried it to the town, to the villages, to the far corners of Wessex. Church bells rang in some places. In others, people blinked at one another over their ale. A maid, one farmer said, reading the notice tacked to the inn's door. He married a maid. Better than some foreign princess who never saw Wessex, his wife replied. Maybe she knows how to keep the kitchen in order. And she is with child, the blacksmith added. Well, good, I like the prince. I would rather his child than some cousin I have never seen. They say she is kind, the innkeeper's daughter said. My cousin works at the castle. She says the new lady still says thank you when someone passes her a bucket. Then perhaps she is the sort we need, the farmer's wife said. In the castle, the news was greeted with a mixture of delight, disbelief, and thin smiles. Lady Charlotte left the castle for her parents' estate within a week. She did not ask for a farewell audience. That is for the best, Edward said when he heard. She deserves a simpler happiness than I could have given her. Amelia's pregnancy progressed. The physician instructed her carefully. You must not exhaust yourself, he said. You are strong, but strength must be guarded. Eat well. Rest. Let others climb the stairs when you can send them in your place. I am used to doing everything myself, she said. Then learn the luxury of being cared for, he replied with a twinkle. It is not so terrible. The servants adjusted. Where Amelia had once carried stacks of linens, she now gave instructions and folded only the lighter pieces. Mrs. Fairchild took a fierce protective pride in overseeing it all. If anyone tells you to do more than you ought, the housekeeper warned, they will answer to me, and to the prince. I am not sure which is worse. Amelia smiled. You have been very kind, Mrs. Fairchild. Do not start making speeches, Mrs. Fairchild said. It does not suit you. Just sit when you are told. The months were not without fear. There were days when Edward's cough returned stronger, and Amelia lay awake listening, one hand on her belly, counting his breaths. There were afternoons when she felt a strange heaviness and worried the child was too quiet, but there were also moments of joy. The first time she felt the baby stir, she was sitting in Edward's chair while he reclined on the sofa, both of them resting after a long morning. She gasped. What is it? He asked, struggling to sit up. She caught his hand and pressed it against her side. Wait, she whispered. For a moment there was nothing. Then a small, firm flutter brushed against his palm. His eyes went wide. That was, he began. Yes, she said, laughing. That was your child kicking you. Rebellious already, he said proudly. Good. Wessex will need someone who does not lie still when the world pushes. After that, he would sometimes rest his hand there and talk to the baby. You do not know me yet, he would murmur. But I know you. You are the reason I drag myself out of bed in the morning when the physician says I may stay. Amelia would watch him, her heart so full it almost hurt. As her belly grew, the castle learned to accept the sight of the prince walking slowly beside a plainly dressed woman whose status no one could quite name, his hand often at the small of her back. One afternoon, as they moved through the corridor, they met Henry. He stopped, took them both in, and smiled. You are a picture, he said. A scandalous one, according to some, but a picture nonetheless. Scandalous? Edward asked. There are those who say a prince must marry only into other royal houses, Henry said. There are others who say it does not matter whom he marries, so long as he breeds like a prize stallion. Both sides are annoyed that you have done something entirely your own. And you? Edward asked. Henry looked at Amelia's rounded form, then at Edward. I see two people who found each other in a house built on formality, he said quietly, and a child who will have a story to hear on winter nights. I find I have little patience for the rest. Amelia smiled. Thank you, my lord. If ever you need a foolish uncle to teach the child bad habits, Henry added, I offer myself. We will keep you in mind, Edward said. Spring came later than usual that year. Snow clung stubbornly to the hills. The castle seemed suspended between seasons. One cold morning, Amelia woke with a strange tightness in her middle that came and went in waves. At first she thought it nothing. By noon she could no longer ignore it. She was in the sitting room, straightening cushions out of habit, when another wave came, stronger. She gripped the arm of the chair. Amelia? Edward asked sharply. What is it? I think, she said, breathing carefully. The baby has decided not to wait for the snow to melt. His face went white, then flushed. He rose, called for the physician and Mrs. Fairchild, and was immediately told to leave the inner chamber. I will not, he protested. You will, the physician said firmly. You will only be in the way. Let the women do their work, Your Highness. You may pace holes in the carpet out here. Amelia, lying on the bed, reached for Edward's hand as he turned to go. He came back to her side at once. Do not be afraid, he said. It was unclear whether he spoke to her or himself. I am, she admitted, but only a little. You are braver than anyone in this house, he said. I will be just outside. Every breath I take will be waiting for news of you. She smiled weakly. Then breathe slowly. It may take some time. He pressed her hand to his lips, then reluctantly obeyed the physician. The hours that followed blurred for Amelia. There was pain, yes, but also voices, Mrs. Fairchild's firm commands, the physician's calm instructions, the whispered encouragement of other women brought to assist. Hands held hers. Cool cloths touched her brow. Nearly there, Mrs. Fairchild said at one point. You have done the hard part. One more push, girl. Think of the face that will look up at you. Amelia did. She thought of a small face she had never seen, and of Edward's waiting on the other side of the door. She gathered what strength she had left and bore down. A moment later there was a cry. Thin at first, then stronger. It cut through the room and out into the corridor like a bell. Edward, pacing back and forth, stopped as if struck. He turned toward the door, eyes wide. Your Highness, the physician called from within, voice full of quiet triumph. Allow me to be the first to congratulate you. You have a son. Edward's legs nearly gave way. Amelia, he asked, is she tired? But well, the physician said. Give us a moment to settle them, then you may come. Henry, who had come running at the sound of the first cry, clapped a hand on Edward's shoulder. You see, Henry said, some things in this world still go right. Edward brushed at his eyes, laughing and crying at once. A son, he murmured. Our son. When they let him in, the room smelled faintly of sweat and soap and something new. Amelia lay propped against pillows, hair damp, face pale but glowing with a quiet joy he had never seen before. In her arms, wrapped in a clean cloth, lay a small bundle. Come, she whispered. Meet him. He moved forward as if in a dream. The baby's face was red, his eyes closed, his tiny fist pressed to his cheek. He is angry, Edward said softly. He is hungry, Amelia corrected with a tired smile. He has had a difficult morning. Edward laughed. May I hold him? He asked. You must, she said. Carefully, as if receiving something more fragile than glass, he took the baby in his arms. The child squirmed, let out a small sound, then settled. Edward stared. He is perfect, he said. He has your mouth, Amelia murmured. And your nose, Edward replied. The rest we will argue about later. The baby's eyes fluttered open for a moment, unfocused. Edward caught his breath. Hello, he whispered. I am your father. We did not think we would meet, but here you are, proving us foolish. Amelia watched them, tears slipping freely down her cheeks now. He will have your stories, she said. He will know you, even if, do not speak as if I were already gone, Edward interrupted gently. I am still here. I feel more here than I have in a year. Look at him. How could I leave now? The physician stepped closer, listening. You seem stronger, Your Highness, he said thoughtfully. Perhaps the prospect of fatherhood has scared your lungs into obedience. Edward smiled. They will have to keep up. I intend to walk this boy through every hall of this castle. In the weeks that followed, something remarkable happened. Edward did not worsen. He tired, yes, he coughed, yes, But the steep decline the physicians had predicted did not come. Instead, his health settled into a fragile but steady state. Some days, he could only sit in his chair with the baby in his arms. Other days he managed slow walks in the garden, Amelia at his side, their son cradled against her shoulder. "It is not what we expected," the physician admitted one morning, watching Edward cross the courtyard with careful steps. "I cannot say he is cured, but I can no longer say with honesty that he has only months. The body sometimes chooses its own path." Amelia, watching through the window, whispered, "Thank you," though she did not say to whom. Word of the prince's son spread through Wessex. Church bells rang without being asked. Farmers raised cups in taverns. Children played at being princes and maids, inventing stories about how great love had conquered illness. In the council chamber, the mood shifted. "We must plan for a regency," the advisor said one day. "Your Highness, should your strength fail, the boy must have a guardian." "He will have several," Edward said. "You, Henry, Amelia." "His mother cannot sit on councils," the advisor said reflexively. "His mother," Edward replied, "has more sense than half of you. She will not wish to sit on councils, but you will ask her opinion, and you will listen to it. That is my command." The advisor bowed. "As you wish, Your Highness." Henry smiled across the table at Amelia, who sat quietly in a corner, the baby asleep in her arms. "You see," Henry whispered, "you are already ruling in your way." "I am only holding him," she replied. "And in doing so," Henry said, "you hold Wessex." Years did not rush by in an instant. They came one at a time, as they always do. Edward's health remained delicate but stable. Some winters were hard. He spent them by the fire, the boy, Edward Henry, for both his father and his uncle, playing on the rug at his feet. Some summers were kind. He rode in a carriage through the town, Amelia beside him, their son waving at the crowds. People grew used to the sight of their prince with a former maid at his side. At first they whispered, then they nodded. Eventually they smiled. "She looks like one of us," a woman in the market said, watching Amelia pass with the boy's hand in hers. "She is one of us," her husband replied. "That is why he chose her." In time, the old king died, and Edward was crowned. The ceremony was grander than he liked, but he endured it, Amelia standing in a place of honor, their son watching solemnly. That evening, in his chambers, crown set aside, Edward sank into his familiar chair with a sigh. "Well," he said, "that is done." Amelia laughed softly. "You have worn heavier burdens." "This one sits better," he said, "knowing I may pass it on when the time comes." Their son, now a sturdy boy of 6, climbed into his lap. "Father," he said, "when I am king, may I still run in the kitchens?" "If your mother permits it," Edward replied. "Then I shall," the boy said, looking at Amelia with a mischievous grin. She shook her head fondly. "We shall see." Later that night, when the boy was asleep, Edward and Amelia stood at the balcony of their chamber. The sky was clear, the stars bright. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked quietly. "What you gave up?" She thought of the linen room, of the quiet life she might have had with a tradesman's wife's apron, with no one knowing her name beyond a few streets. "No," she said. "Do you?" "I regret only that I cannot promise you 50 years, he said, "but I do not regret a single moment I have had." She took his hand. "We have more than we were told we would," she said. "Every day now feels like a gift the doctors did not expect to give." He smiled, "Then let us spend them well." She leaned her head on his shoulder. Below them, in the courtyard, a small figure darted, chasing fireflies, a nurse hurrying after. "Do you think he will be a good king?" she asked. "I think," Edward said, "that with you to guide him and with the memory of how he came to be, he will remember that crowns mean nothing if they do not sit on heads that bow to those who have less." "And you?" she asked. "What will you remember?" He turned to her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I will remember," he said, "that once in a dark winter when I thought everything was ending, a girl who folded sheets and kept her eyes on the floor lifted her head, looked at me, and changed the fate of a kingdom." Her eyes shone. I only said yes. That, he replied, was everything. They stood together, watching their son chase light in the dark, the future running ahead of them with bare feet and laughter, and Amelia silently promised that as long as she had breath, she would keep telling him the story of the night his father asked a maid to share his last 6 months, and instead found a lifetime. Thank you so much for listening to this story all the way to the end. We hope it moved you as much as it moved us while telling it. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave us a comment telling us where you're listening from and what you liked the most. Rate this story from 0 to 10. What score would you give it? If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like as a show of support. That really motivates us to keep creating and sharing more stories full of emotion and life lessons. And before we go, we want to remind you that an exciting and heartwarming story recommendation will appear on the final screen. If you'd like to enjoy it, just click on the video. Thank you once again for being here, and we'll see you in the next story.